Dan Harmon's show Community was streets ahead.
Know what I mean?
I don't.
You're not alone in this case.
Pierce, stop trying to coin the phrase streets ahead.
Trying? Coined and minted. Been there, coined that. Streets Ahead is verbal wildfire.
It is hard to think of another show that was more creative, funny, and smart throughout its incredibly turbulent 6 seasons, and it was turbulent. This show, from just the end of its first season, was on the verge of cancellation and was considered dead until it was brought back by its incredibly rabid fan base. But why were they so rabid? What was it about this show in particular that created such a devotion for it, that they would even create their own convention in its name? It could have been the cast and crew. I mean, the show was filled to the brim with talent. If shows could be rock bands, the Community was the fucking Led Zeppelin of comedy shows, in terms of how much genius was involved from top to bottom. Including one, yeah, I know, very specific guy. He's very famous now. You all know him as the main character of Mystery Team.
We're the Mystery Team. My name's Jason, the Master of Disguise.
Hi, my name's Sammy.
I'm Duncan, the boy genius.
We should thank the hobo so he doesn't put a curse on us.
And I'm Charlie, the strongest kid in town.
However, I think it all comes back to the meta and continuity-focused storytelling that led throughout the entire show and was heralded by the creative mind of Dan Harmon. Harmon's mix of pop culture references, meta humor and attention to detail, and mix of cynicism and optimism created one of the most engaging worlds in a sitcom. Harmon, when creating the show, said he based it all on his own experiences in community college and the friend group he acquired by going there, with some of the characters being direct inspirations from people he knew. And it's just like crazy to think about how this simple premise that started the show turns into this meta-narrative involving paintball games, multiple universes, and high-stakes Dungeons & Dragons games. How did this happen? And how the fuck did it work? I'm making this video for a few reasons. First, to stop annoying my friends from talking about this show all fucking day. Second, to go through one of the most insane shows ever made, season by season, and really dissect how it changed over its run, and how it still managed to keep the hardened ideas from day one. This was originally supposed to be a 1 hour long video, but it's actually gonna be a 6-parter to truly and finally answer the question, what made Community so streets ahead?
Does it just mean cool, or is it supposed to be like miles ahead?
If you have to ask, your street's fine.
The pilot to Community is weird, and not how the show is usually weird. It's weird in hindsight because of how normal and generic it is in comparison to the rest of the show.
Thinking back on the pilot, was there something in the script or something in your characters that you could point to and you're like, that's the show that we made, even in those first days, that it had whatever the special sauce of the show was?
No.
The whole feel is that of just a normal NBC sitcom, from the lighting to the hip indie soundtrack featuring way too much Matt and Kim. The early episodes feel like it's a show that really didn't know what it wanted to be in the beginning. If you don't know, the premise is that a former lawyer named Jeff Winger loses his license after being revealed that his diploma was a fake. Now, he must go to the local joke community college named Greendale, where a former client works, played by John Oliver, who, yeah, is in this show, and he's hilarious.
My name is Ian Duncan, and I'm here to say I'm going to rap to the beat in a rapping way. I've got a real big penis, and I drink lots of tea.
Along the way, he meets Britta, a girl he finds cute in his Spanish class, and he creates a fake study group to attempt to sleep with her. Only, it backfires when Britta actually invites a bunch of people. Hijinks ensue. The people in this study group include Pierce, the heir to a moist towelette empire, Christian divorcee named Shirley Bennett, a former Adderall addict, Annie Edison, former football star Troy Barnes, and the pop culture obsessed Abed. Jeff is reluctant about the whole thing and makes them turn against each other, but by the end they become a study group, and that's basically the premise. The whole thing is full of snappy dialogue and pop culture references, and it's fine, but it's not particularly clever or engaging. It feels very safe. However, I'm not going to shit on it too much, because one thing I think it does very well is establish the characters very efficiently over the course of 23 minutes. By the time the runtime is over, you have a sense of who these people are and what makes them tick. Sure, it's not who they would be for the rest of the series, but over the course of the season, you see them grow and change naturally. So by the end, it feels like a great evolution. And that's what I think is brilliant about the whole season, now that I think about it. The first 5 to 6 episodes are pretty generic fare, mostly because the characters are pretty standard archetypes, and the premises of most of the episodes basically involve Jeff wants to sleep with Britta, Britta says no, he has to prove himself to Britta, etc. There is a few highlights here or there, but really, it's just kind of generic NBC fare. But by episode 7, you kind of see the roles change a little. It's almost kind of like a, excuse my pun, a re-pilot, if you will. Britta is portrayed as more goofy, Annie is less of a prude, and Troy and Abed's dynamic is more firmly established. In fact, I'm pretty sure during the filming of this episode in particular is when they were told there had to be end tags at the end of the episodes, and that's when Danny Hootie and Donald Glover decided they wanted to be together, and honestly, the show was much better for it. Their chemistry is basically the heart of the show. And watching it grow and develop over the course of the season is a genuine treat. Once the roles get more established, the show still has some pretty generic sitcom scenarios, usually revolving around, love triangles and relationships, but as the show starts taking them less seriously and subverting the viewer's expectations. Instead of expecting the viewers to care about Jeff and Britta's relationship that has no chemistry, the show makes fun of the fact that they have no chemistry. It shows the relationship as less of a will they, won't they, and them being in love with each other, and more these two should just fuck already. And the show starts getting into a bit of the absurd around the midpoint. In fact, I'd say the episode where Community becomes Community, finally, is Season 1, Episode 10. The ending sequence features Jeff reuniting their Spanish teacher, played by Ken Jeong, with his estranged wife through the power of dance, along with Irish music and Troy and Abed singing Somewhere Out There to their lab rat. It's a wonderful sequence that shows what the show is really, really about, the broken and the beautiful. It features two things that should not work together and somehow create something great, the Irish music and the American Tail song. Which is kind of a metaphor for the whole show, really. It features broken characters who have deep-seated issues, but yet come together to create this community. And the show itself features these people along with absurd premises, but they have them with grounded problems that make them feel real. And this is when the show truly reveals itself. It reveals itself as having these absurd premises, but has real grounded issues that ground the characters in reality. So even though what's happening is crazy, it feels so much bigger because of what the characters are feeling and what it means to them.
Somewhere out there, if love can see us through, then we'll be together somewhere out there. Out where dreams come true.
The run of episodes past this point are filled with gold, but I want to focus on one in particular, a little underrated episode in Season 1 called Physical Education. This episode features Jeff butting heads with his pool instructor over not wanting to wear shorts because he wants to look cool, and shorts, I guess, don't make you look cool. And the side plot involves the rest of the gang trying to get Abed to change who he is so he can get with a girl who seems to have drawn him in a textbook. At the end of the second act, Jeff decides to just quit the class because he doesn't like being forced to change for the teacher, while for Abed it is revealed that the girl has a boyfriend who looks just like him and that the gang calls White Abed. The group attempts to apologize to Abed, but then something kind of amazing happens.
Everybody wants to help me. But usually when they find out they can't, they get frustrated and stop talking to me. Or they trick me into buying them ice cream and then shove me into a clothes dryer. Which I didn't want to happen with you guys, so I want to make sure that you felt like you could help me. The truth is, lots of girls like me because, let's face it, I'm pretty adorable. And my aloofness unconsciously reminds them of their fathers, so... I'm more used to them approaching me.
So we didn't damage your self-esteem or anything?
Bert, I got self-esteem falling out of my butt. That's why I was willing to change for you guys. Because when you really know who you are and what you like about yourself, changing for other people isn't such a big deal.
Abed, you're a god.
This is when the stakes are truly revealed. The episode uses the absurdity of the pool playing in the shorts to reveal a story about knowing who you are and being okay with change. This makes Jeff comfortable with the shorts and then evolves into a naked pool match with the teacher, who he beats and earns his respect. But what Jeff is actually learning is that it's okay to not be looking 100% cool all the time, and that he should like himself more and be okay with changing. You see, a moment like this, a naked pool match between one man and another, should be where a lesser show jumps the shark, but really the absurdity of the whole thing is what strengthens it. The show uses this absurdity to distract the audience for so long, and it's so funny that you kind of get disarmed. That when the grounded reality comes in and the true emotional stakes are revealed, it hits even harder. And this episode is a perfect example of it, and honestly, I wouldn't even consider it a top 20 episode of the show. Also, it features Abed playing Don Draper, and I mean, come on. That's cool enough as it is.
What are you reading?
Pride and Prejudice?
So you're familiar with two sins. How about a third?
Oh. I don't think we're allowed to smoke in here.
And you picked the wrong outfit. Didn't you?
Abed, what are you doing?
Don Draper from Mad Men. What'd you think?
Weird.
Awesome. Put your tongue in her ear.
I guess now is the point where I should actually talk about the talented cast and how they portray their characters. Joel McHale in the show basically plays himself most of the time, but Joel McHale is really good at playing Joel McHale.
I discovered at a very early age that if I talk long enough, I could make anything right or wrong. So either I'm God or truth is relative. And in either case, booyah.
He pulls off the sarcastic, don't give a fuck, but still kinda give a fuck attitude that the character needs. And honestly, I don't think he gets enough credit for how well he pulls off a lot of the more emotional scenes later on in the show, which I will get to. He's a great leading man. I'll talk about Britta a lot later in this video, a lot how her character kind of changed as the show went on, but Gillian Jacobs does a good enough job with not so great material early in the season, and when they finally let her be goofier and more flawed as a character, I think she really starts to shine, and she turns into a highlight of the whole show.
That's who I am. Knock, knock. Who's there? Cancer. Oh, good. Come on in. I thought it was Britta.
Alison Brie really pulls off the young, ambitious girl character really well, and the chemistry she develops with Joel naturally really makes probably the most compelling romance subplot in the whole show, which, I mean, isn't a high bar, but it's pretty good. Yvette Nicole Brown is probably the least served character writing-wise. Shirley is probably given the least amount to do in this season and basically every other season. However, Brown delivers her lines in such a way that it makes a very compelling character. She adds more depth that's probably actually there. I think it's a very underrated, funny performance. The way she says certain things just gets funnier on rewatch, and I think she really kind of elevates the character on the level of the rest of the cast, which I just wish the writing did the same, but I'll get into it more later. I joked before, but honestly, let's be real here, Donald Glover is the highlight here. Every single thing he does in a scene is funny. In fact, I'm pretty sure there was a part in the script at every episode that basically just says Donald does something funny. Enough said.
I'm saying you're a football player. It's in your blood. That's racist. Your soul. That's racist. Your eyes. That's gay. That's homophobic. That's black. That's racist. Damn.
However, he is the co-highlight here with Danny Pudi, who adds so much to the Abed character. This is a character that could so easily come across as annoying or offensive, as he is a character who has Asperger's, and it is portrayed in a specific way, but Danny Pudi adds so much empathy and depth to the character that it really is a great performance. I'm not the type of guy to shit on The Big Bang Theory. I don't think it's that bad, but Danny Pudi gives such a better performance than Parson does as Sheldon Cooper. It's just not fair, and honestly, I think he should have been getting the Emmys that Parsons was getting, but hey, it is what it is. Finally, you knew it was coming. Let's talk about Chevy Chase. Now, when it comes to the behind-the-scenes drama with a lot of the show, I'll get to that stuff later, of course, don't worry, but I'm just gonna come out and say it. Chevy doesn't get enough credit. He does a really good job in this show. Like, I know he's an asshole, he hated the material, but I think he brings a lot to the character, especially in season 1. Now, I really enjoy a lot of the things that the character does in season 2, the more villainous role, which I will get to, don't worry, but in season 1, he's portrayed as much more sympathetic. He and Jeff have a lot of great moments where he's almost a picture of what Jeff could become if he doesn't connect with people, but also he gives Jeff really valuable lessons.
Going back to my sailing class.
After they murdered you.
Jeffrey, when I was born, I got my umbilical cord wrapped around my neck, both arms, and one of my ankles. Mom said that there came a point when the doctor stopped delivering me and just started laughing. I mean, if I ever let being bad at something stop me, I wouldn't even be here. That thing some men call failure, I call living. Breakfast. And I'm not leaving till I've cleaned out the buffet.
This is also the only season where he feels like actually part of the group instead of just this outsider or villain, so it's kind of weird to go back and see that Dan Harmon's hatred of him didn't affect the writing yet, and it kind of makes you wonder what the character could have been if it was played by, they considered Patrick Stewart or Fred Willard. Like, how different would Community have been, and would we have gotten some of the best episodes in Season 2 if Chevy Chase wasn't an asshole? I don't know. Now it's time to talk about the episode that changed Community forever. Modern Warfare. Now, the whole show has been increasingly building up the absurdity over the course of the season, casually building these characters and their relationships up. The biggest being the Jeff and Britta sexual tension, which was at this point reaching its breaking point. How will the show solve it? Paintball. In the 23rd episode of Season 1, Community goes from a traditional sitcom about a community college into something much more. Now, it is true the first high-concept episode of the show was contemporary American poultry, in homage to Scorsese gangster flicks.
It's like a mafia movie. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be in a mafia movie. Cool.
However, that was still within the traditional rules that Community was following up to that point. Modern Warfare blew up that conceit and created a perfect episode of television that defined the show for the rest of its run. The show uses a paintball game between students to effectively homage all kinds of action films while also being a compelling piece of action television itself. Directed by future Fast and the Furious director Justin Lin, the episode revolves around a paintball game between the students for priority registration, and that game, as you could tell, goes a little too far. Cliques are established, the school is ruined, and then the dean employs Senior Chang to win the game for the school because priority registration doesn't actually exist. It all comes down to Jeff and Britta, who just relieved some tension on the table versus Chang.
Buenos dias, children!
Jeff eventually wins and gives it to Shirley so she can see her kids more. It is a huge, bombastic episode of television where everyone pretends they are in a war. And the best part is that the show completely commits. The episode works because you can kind of buy why everyone is taking it so seriously, even though they're taking it too far. In the scene around the fireplace, the characters give very honest explanations about why they want it, and it gives a real sense of authenticity to the stakes. And the homage itself is great, referencing films like Die Hard and Mad Max to great effect. I can honestly say it is one of the best love letters to the action genre in television history, while also just being really funny as well.
Oh my God, you've been hit.
What? Oh no. Wait. It's blood. I thought it was paint, but I'm just bleeding. Talk about luck. Ugh.
But most importantly, it also changes the show's trajectory forever. I'm getting into it more in Season 2, but this is the episode that changed Community from streets ahead television to peak television comedy. This is the turning point, and still stands as one of the show's best episodes. The last two episodes are a really good resolution of the rest of the show's arc. The gang passes Spanish, while Chang gets kicked out of teaching it and then becomes a student. Troy and Pierce decide to live together. Annie is thinking about leaving her tiny-nippled boyfriend, and Jeff has to choose between Britta and his current girlfriend, Slater.
Actually,
Guys, cleanest face ever.
Hey, am I okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the finale, after winning the Transfer Queen dance, nicknamed the Tranny Dance because it was 2009, Britta proclaims her love for Jeff, which makes Jeff have to choose in front of everyone. Instead of making a choice, he leaves out the back and finds Annie, who has decided not to leave. They both kiss and the season ends. Now, with this ending, the show can go in a multitude of directions, and Honestly, I don't think anyone was expecting the one it actually decided to go towards. But we'll get into that next time.
We're canceled. So, I mean, not exactly, but it's, you know, look, I'm not good at, like, bad news, but all of you have to work with Chevy again for another season. You got...
Yeah, Chevy.